È il coso della. Okay. Okay. Please take your seat. We go on. Just an information for tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, the work will resume at 10 a.m. precise. There are the round table. But as you can see from the program, at 9:30, before immersing ourselves in the round table, we offer, for those we want, so it's not mandatory, two possibilities. Option A, to take a coffee and relaxing and socializing under the porch, or B, make an oxygenating talk in the wood. Before to go to dinner, you have to advise my colleague for option A and option B. Fabio tell me something. No. Okay. Fabio will be the guide in the wood, so it's the option B. Choose the option A, it's better. No. Okay. If you will return to home, it's better the option A. Okay, we start.
Okay, yes, welcome back. Welcome back. We are starting with the second panel of today. And this time, maybe I would just briefly introduce everybody who is sitting next to me, and then give it to Andrea for his initial contribution. So for this second panel, and again, you have all the bios in the materials, but still, we have starting from the right, my right, and Andrea Mochi-Sismondi from Ateliersi in Bologna. Andrea is an author, and he is the co-director together with Fiorenza Menni, who is also here with us. They are co-directing the collective Ateliersi that works in Bologna with an interdisciplinary practice, and I'm quoting from their presentation, an anthropological approach to the arts. So they are at the same time an artistic collective also running a space as Andrea, and the residency program, as Andrea will tell us. Then we have Angela Fumarola, who is the co-director of Armunia, Centri di Residenza Toscana, so the residency center in Tuscany, based in Castiglioncello and Rosignano Marittimo, two small towns. Angela is co-directing Armunia since 2014, if I'm right, where she brings a particular national projects such as Focus Young Mediterranean and Middle East Choreographers and Crossing the Sea. And she's co-directing Armunia together with Fabio Masi. And then we have Cristina Planas Leitao. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. She's a curator and is part of the artistic direction of Teatro Municipal de Porto, where she also curating the festival DDD, Dias da Dança, and Campus Paulo Cunha e Silva, which is the place from where she will be speaking to us today, a residency program that was founded last year in 2021. And then Aina Joanet from now Ivanov in Barcelona. Again, I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly. I didn't check it. Yeah, cool. Aina is a producer. She's collaborating with multiple projects and collectives in Barcelona, but is here with us today particularly because of her experience within Now, where she facilitates the artistic residencies and the residency centers' international exchanges. And I try to point out the different cities and places where we speak from, so maybe not so much about nationalities, but really places which are in some cases big metropolises and in other cases smaller towns. I guess this matters for our conversation today. And again, we start with an initial contribution and very grateful that we have Andrea with us, and in a way also bridging very nicely from the previous panel, I think, because as we said, Ateliersi is not in a way just curating a space, but is also a collective of artists facilitating space for others. So we listen to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Silvia, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to l'Arboreto di Mondaino and the Stronger Peripheries Project for the invitation. 15 minutes are not a lot, and there are so many things to say about the curatorial activity of the residency holders. So to be sure I stay in time, I will read a written outline. I will start with a very brief presentation of my point of view, not to be self-referential, but so that the considerations and themes I propose can be referred to the practice from which they derive. Then I will set out a few concepts which we consider as fundamental in the relationship between holders and resident artists. Finally, I'll try to identify some open questions that I will pose as a stimulus for the following discussion. Together with Fiorenza Menni, I'm the author and the artistic director of the Ateliersi Theatre Collective, which deals with the creation and production in the field of performing arts. For many years, we have been hosting artists in residence at Ateliersi, our production space located in a former monastery in the center of the city of Bologna. About 10 years ago, we undertook major renovation works on the space, which allowed us to add to the theater some courtyards and 2 additional floors with a guest house, rehearsal room, a kitchen, and a convivial place to stay, eat, chill out, and have meetings. From that moment on, the residency hosting activity got structured into a consolidated program that, in harmony with our non-gargantuan size, consists of 4 to 5 residencies per year of both Italian and foreign artists. Our specificity lies in the fact that we are artists, and therefore we integrate the residency program into a broad poetic project focusing on the exploration of contemporary languages and interdisciplinary practice, which also has production, distribution, and programming as its cornerstone. This specificity of our approach leads me to the first basic concept I would like to put on the table, which concerns the quality of the encounter that residencies can generate. The residency holders can become a reference point for the artists when they manage to get over the strictly defined roles of project selectors and space managers and open up to a direct dialogue with artists that enables the creation of sartorial residential projects. The residency is the place where artists encounter the resources, the means, and the protection to develop their creation in its delicate germinal phase, but it can also be the place where, through careful preliminary work, they can encounter stimuli capable of adding layers of depth to their work and amplifying the possibilities of restitution. For all this to happen, it is important that the residency doesn't begin with the first day of the artist's stay in the space, but that the dialogue between holders and resident artists develops over the months and sometimes years preceding the moment of the physical arrival. In this way, when the artist arrives, the process of involving the territorial, artistic, and cultural communities, the audience when foreseen, not every time, and the purchase of tutoring are already ongoing. This underlining of the dialogical aspect raises a question about the relationship between the artist's wishes and the function of residencies, which I will return to. To set out a few more points that seem important to me, I will start from the 3 keywords that we, together with the other residency holder in Emilia-Romagna, have chosen as a guide for the shared epiphany of residency project that will be developed over the next 3 years: time, space, and relationship. Space. As residency holders, we have become increasingly aware of how much the specificity of residency space can influence the artist. In our case, the articulated architecture of our theater itself suggests a new solution to the artists, both for their works and in the way they experience the space during the creation phase. But it is the place of residence itself that is enriched through the solutions devised by the artists to inhabit it in a way that adheres to their own poetics. The way an artist has used a corner, a glimpse, a piece of equipment, or a piece of furniture, the words another artist has used to describe them remain and create a collective experience that lingers in the residency's holders' imagination and influences their future work. The multiplicity of approaches between the artists in residence and the architecture of the places expand the significance of the spaces, boosts their vocations, and broadens the possibilities of hosting the following creative gestures. And what happens with the architecture also happens in the relationship between the artists and the communities in which the architecture and the artistic and cultural projects of residency holders are immersed. Second, time. The work in residence, through permanence in space, is capable of transforming time into duration. During the residency, the time escapes from its conventional measurement. It expands. And in the creative process, it thickens up, thanks to the possibility for artists to inhabit a place of work and life over the course of 24 hours, in a period entirely to exploring and expanding work areas that the production routine normally tends to compress. The unforeseen events during the residencies become the possibility of a turning point, of a deviation to the side, of opening up new directions of works. There is enough time to welcome the consequences of the unforeseen events, to welcome them as opportunities rather than impediments. In the co-sharing and co-presence of artist holders with resident artists, the poetical, political, and ethical exchanges arise. These exchanges, if on the one hand they enter in the work, on the other hand they persist over time, exceeding the temporal unity of the residency period and projecting the relationship into the following years, in which projects often continue to be followed, protected, promoted, and loved by the residency holders. Third, relationship. Our way of seeing the relationships that innervate the residential process is centered not only on dialogical proximity, but also on the design of areas of sharing between guest artists and 4 other subjects who must open up to their work. The first subject are the external tutors, whom we as residency holders engage, and whom we ask to flank the artists in their work through their own authorial gaze and to elaborate narratives through their own languages and channels. In our case, these are both academics and curators active in the performing arts and other professionals or artists from different disciplines, visual artists, journalists, designers, writers, or musicians who through their sensitivities and skills enable the artists to explore unusual dimensions of their work. The third subject is the audience, both the one that usually follows the holder's programming and the one made up of the new spectators that the residencies themselves stimulate to involve. The fourth subject is actually the residency holders, who in addition to assisting the artists in their work in theater, take on the task of mediating between their research and the other 3 subjects. These are also often the context in which new forms of public openings and relationships with spectators can be experimented. Regarding the relationship with the audience, I want to emphasize 2 aspects that seem particularly valuable to me. The first is that in residency projects, it is the creative process itself that is often at the center of the fruition. The spectators go to see the performances, but they also enter into the kitchen, into the lab, share the paths, listen to the artists talk about themselves, sometimes take part in one of their workshops. And in this way, the encounter takes on a new cultural value. The second is that it's precisely through the active involvement of the audience that the relationship with the spectators can be strengthened, exploring a new role for them, no longer merely as consumers, but also as activators of new relationships and new processes, both within themselves and in the community. The relationship with the audience is thus transformed in a direction that seems to us an improvement, and which could also show the way to the other protagonists of the theater system, especially to the more rigid and less permeable institutions, which might hopefully welcome these new inventions in the artist/audience relationship that have proved to be highly effective. Of course, this relationship with the audience is not imposed on artists, who can also choose, if they wish, to conduct research behind closed doors. But in recent years, we have realized that the search for new forms of openness is a shared desire. And it is by starting from the artist's desire that I want to arrive to the last issue, already mentioned in the previous panel, and which I pose to you as an open question. There is a fact. Residency not only represents one of the few places where artists can afford to embark on research paths without the obligation of presenting their final results. They also constitute an alternative network on the national level through which artists can create relationships and give visibility to their work. Listening to the artist's desires, we realized that through residency, they often aim to fill gaps left by production, programming, and distribution organizations. It is no mystery that in several places in Italy, you can see open rehearsal, public openings, and even full performances by artists of the highest quality, just because there is a residency that there was welcomed. And the dimension requested by the artist of visibility is inside the residency project. If the Italian theater system doesn't include, as it should, the production companies with a vocation for research and experimentation in the programming season, then residencies find themselves filling the role of substitutes. There are ongoing projects to strengthen the coordination between the residency system and the other components of the national theater system, but in Italy we are still at an early stage of the process. On this point, I would ask our Italian colleagues to express their views and our foreign colleagues to tell us how the relationship between residency holders and other actors in the system is developing in their countries. I would like to close this speech with words that are not mine, but with a consideration of the artists gathered in the Van Association that we hosted in a residence a couple of years ago and that I liked very much. They say, we needed a place where we could provide ourselves with time for pure reflection on the one hand, while on the other hand, constantly reminding us that our thoughts are facing a future made of theater, stage, and audience. Ateliersi was at the same time a home and a window reminder of our future. So thank you for your attention. I leave on the table this issue for next confrontation in the discussion.
Thank you, Andrea. Yes, thank you very much, Andrea. We will keep also the three keywords that you gave us, so space, time, and relationship. I guess this words resonate already with everybody. And of course, your question about the relation between residencies and production. And I think indeed, as you suggest, it will be interesting to hear more, especially from Aina and Christina, how in their context, the residency programs that they are running is connected to other subjects in the field, or how it is part of a broadened ecosystem, let's say. I would suggest that we proceed as we did in the first panel, so that I give the mic to each of you so that you can, in a way, situate yourself and your reflection and start sharing your thoughts, and then we start weaving connections and questions together. And maybe we start with you, Aina. You have a mic, yes. Yes.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you, first of all, thank you for inviting me, and especially thank you for organizing this seminar and for giving all of us the time to do so and to stop for a moment and just be here and talking and thinking about this subject. I wanted to give you a bit of context. I'm Aina. I'm a performing arts producer in Barcelona. I work in now Ivanov, that used to be in an old factory, and 25 years ago, actually, it started as a multidisciplinary space. And it was back in the 2010 that City Council of Barcelona bought this building, and among others, but kept the running of the cultural organization to the foundations that already were running them. So from that point is how it became what now Ivanov is nowadays. That is a residency space. We mainly host performing art residency spaces and processes. We are 3 full-time and 3 part-time workers there, and we are mainly funded by local and regional government. So in this context, 5 years ago, we organized a kind of a seminar such like this one, and we reunite artists and managers, and we decided to write down a definition of a residency and what an ideal residency should be. And this is the definition that is like our mantra nowadays, and we always, when we work with resident companies, we keep all this meaning of this definition that we make. And I'm gonna read this statement. So the whole seminar decided that a residency must be a flexible process that takes place in a space and time. And I can add relationship, as Andrea said. So a space and time with proper working conditions that's adapted to the specific needs of each welcome project. A flexible space that generates trust and dialogue in order to take care of the process the creator undergoes and is able to collect, share, and patrimonialize the knowledge that is generated within the artistic practice. It must be endowed with an economic contribution that allows the creator to work properly. So economic resources with fees for the research process, and also with a human team that assists in all areas, but without interference in the creation itself. A residency must also be able to offer an open connection and exchange spaces that facilitate the continuity of artistic trajectory. For this reason, it should be part of a community network that includes the artist, the creation center, and the environment. So the residents must be accessible through different selection processes and must be based on creation timings and not production timings. Actually, with this definition, and that it's what we apply to our resident companies, it reminds me of what Ricardo just said in the previous discussion. If you keep this in mind, I think it's when the artists feel like they are working and they find a place where to work while they are creating or just doing their investigation. So in this context, I'd say that our main focus at Now Ivanov is the local resident companies, that we consider them as a constellation. It's like an ecosystem where they are in the center, and we offer them several services around them. I'd say briefly 3 main topics around the resident companies project. It's about a companionship, it's about internationalization, and it's about the process. So about the companionship, I like when people ask me what you do at Now Ivanov, I'd like to answer about what we do not do. So we do not produce, we do not create, we do not exhibit, and we do not program. So we accompany artists. It's about the title of this discussion about welcome and care. We welcome them and we care about them. So how we do that? We organize regular meetings. We promote network moments between them. Could be a meeting breakfast, could be after our moment to meet, could be just working moments, also campings or working groups. We also offer them mentorships, artistic or managing mentorships. We offer trainings depending on their needs. They ask us for what they need and we kind of invest on that. We also offer them paid residencies. So while we offer them some residencies during the time that they are part of the project, we pay them, we hire them directly for them to be able to create with no pressure and without proper conditions. And we also promote the internationalization of their projects. And how we do that? We again cover the expenses they need to go internationally. We also organize specific trainings for them to think their projects internationally. And also, we are part of networks of local, national, international networks for us to be able to meet other new partners, for us to be able to send them abroad and new possibilities. And actually, also Christina from the previous discussions talk about how important it is to go abroad, to actually there, I think it's the best moment for the companies, for the artists, to find the space and the time and the relationships to actually focus on their projects, on their ideas. And it's maybe why go to a residency that you were asking before. It's exactly for that, to find that time and space and moment to think about that. And last but not least, we are also trying to connect with the community. Actually, just recently, we added this role in the team, that is the mediation person, medical cultural mediation person, who basically and super briefly runs two main projects that are the Bitácora project, that is that we have already talked about it today. That is this possibility for the general audience to be part of the processes of the research going on the rehearsal rooms, but not only the rehearsals, but the whole chain of value, so the whole chain of the process. So they also meet with designers, they also meet with the production team, and they can follow the whole process. And also we work with this public school in the neighborhood where we kind to try to connect the whole school with also the whole chain of value of the performing arts. This is basically what I wanted to share as a context. Of course, if you anytime visit Barcelona, please contact us and I will be glad, and my team. And of course, I'm talking as the producer there, but of course I talk on behalf of the whole team at Now Ivanov, so we'll be more than glad to welcome you. And I think that's it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aina. Thank you very much. I think we will for sure come back to some of the points that you raised, and particularly when you talk about the accompanying artists, which we were also wondering in preparation if this is a word that we all use in our languages. And I have a memory that this is very much of a Southern European word, in the sense that now France, Spain, Portugal, Italy, we all understand what we mean by accompagnamento, accompanying artists, and that's often a bit more tricky to translate that into English.
Yes, we actually mentioned that when we met on the Zoom. It was like, okay, use this word. I'm not sure if it's an English word. But
exactly. I guess here we all can relate to this. Yes. And maybe another context, that's also what is called development, no, supporting the development of process, and there is something about continuity, which is, I think, super important. And also what you raise now in the end with a cultural mediation function, in a way, is also a question that is for sure very present in this panel, which is also how do you as organizers and curators of residencies also relate to and connect to a local community and the place where, how do you see your responsibility in connecting local and international artists to a specific locality? Just rephrasing this as all questions that are a bit in the air, and we will be enriching them with different perspectives. Continuing with Christina. Thank you, Aina.
Hello, everyone. I'm Christina, and again, also thank you for holding this space and for inviting us here. It's very good to be talking about these subjects and stopping for a little moment. So, I will explain a little bit the context, because I find it very important, since we're all very different projects, and that the context really conditions the mission of the residency centers. First of all, I identify myself as a choreographer, mostly, because I see the panel before was more artist and this one is more curator, so I like to bring everybody together in that sense. And I was invited in 2019 to be part of the programming curating team by the director, Tiago Guedes, which is leaving today. I'm not there to say goodbye, it's very funny. So, just a context. Before 2013, Porto, which is the second largest city of Portugal with 220,000 inhabitants, was really a cultural desert. We had a right-wing mayor that really burned it all down. Then in 2013, we got a new mayor, which is still running, and he's really put a lot of effort into bringing again culture alive in the city. So, since then, there was a renovation of the city theater. We are fully funded by the municipality, which I think is also an important thing to say. And the project started with the city theater, two venues where we program, present, co-produce. We don't produce, also we co-produce international, national and local performances. Every weekend there's a new presentation. Since 2016, we also created the DDD Festival, which is a festival that happens in April, International Festival, that connects the three closed cities of Gaia, Porto and Matosinhos. We felt that in all this externalization of presenting, we really forgot the local scene and the local artists. And the local artists were also really reclaiming working spaces and studio spaces. So Campus, which is this residency space that opened just a year ago, so it's really fresh, was a response to the local scene. It was a former primary school that got refurbished in the middle of the pandemic, so we got a lot of time, and we spoke to 40 local artists in terms of what do you need. That was the question we were asking the most. What do you need? What if you would make this program, what it would be for you? Of course, it helped that I'm from there and I lived abroad, and when I came back, I encountered this desert. So my experience was also a part of building this program. And most of them actually really needed just space to work, regular space to work, that they could access easily without a selection, for example, without curatorship. So one of the missions of Campus was really automatically defined. Like, we had to provide local space for the local scene, where it doesn't rain, where they can, this is important because mostly before, spaces in Porto are really squatting spaces that people just occupy, and sometimes the conditions are very, very difficult to work. Besides that, so we really locked ourselves to start building this artistic project of Campus, basically, which is more than a curatorship project, is more a functioning project. because we don't program also. We are really resisting the temptation of curatorship in this space, which is something we really have to explain to the production team and communication team all the time, like, this is invisible, you don't have to all the time put it out there. So just to explain, we divide the time and the spaces. 50% we build like a booking platform that only local artists that have a local address, they can register, they can book studios. It can go from 4 to 240 hours. When these hours are gone, they wait a month and then it refills again. It's a pilot project, so far has been working, and the studios are always used, so there's no fee. They don't get paid, but they also don't pay. They use the studios, they enter, they can use it at 4 in the morning if they want. It's 24 hours open. Then the other 50% of time, space, and resources we use to build 3 different open calls that open once per year, every year with a rotational jury. I say this because I find it very important that it's not always the same person deciding, especially when it's an open call. I'm always there, but I represent 1/3 of the jury, and I make sure that we don't give too much to the same people, so we really operate on a distribution of resources. So we have residencies. For each of us, residencies really mean different things. For us at campus, a residency is a 3-week occupation of the space in the time frame that they want to do it, in the date they want to do it, and they get paid for it. They get a fee of 500 euros per week. I say this because I think in Portugal it's quite important. We are not so regulated as here, as it seems. The residency spaces are really not regulated at all, and usually you don't get paid. So this was really a fight that artistic work, even if it's research or rehearsal, it's paid work. It's a daily paid work, so this needs to happen. So whoever is selected for the residencies, they get paid, they get accommodation, and they have an option of choosing an outside eye. Porto was very closed, so nobody ever wanted to share the work because there was so little that we always wanted to protect ourselves from competition. So this is also an effort in terms of, do you want to share your work with someone else that maybe can help have another look? So there's like a pool of people, international, national, local, that they can choose if they want. And we try to propose a preview moment, which is a little bit of an open doors of what they're doing. But this can be on their first day, on the middle, or at the end. Can be a talk, can be a book that they leave there, can be an open rehearsal. I always hated when people propose that to me in residency, so I'm very careful in talking and addressing that subject because sometimes indeed can be too soon. Besides that, we offer technical residencies at the theater. We noticed that technical part of the project usually comes at the end, or there's not at all a space for experimenting with technology, with light and with sound. So we also offer 4 residencies at the main venue that they have the whole technical team available to experiment that. We always have like very little number of applicants for that, which is also because people, I find artists associate the technical part with just the end of the project, but it takes time to change, so we keep on doing it. And we also offer 8 research, I wouldn't call it residencies, we call this project Reclaiming Time. So we give like a special financial support for 8 artists that they can research where they want, when they want, and then they get together for 3 weeks at campus. They share space if they want, they stay alone if they want, so we haven't figured that out very well yet, but we're on the way. It's the 2nd edition, and every time we try to build a program together with the artists. Besides that, in one of the studios we offer daily practices. It's not really classes, it's sometimes choreographers that we present in the regular season. I invite them to stay longer or to come earlier, and they can offer daily practice that goes from voice to aikido to yoga to conventional dance. So what is this expanded practice of performing arts that maybe, sometimes there's a class of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, for example. What else can I say? Yes, this would be the 5 aspects: the daily training, the artistic residencies that don't imply technique, the technical residencies, the research project, and the studio space for local artists to book. Of course, all these projects, the season, the festival, and campus, they really connect. For example, already now in the first year of Campus Residency Center, 2 of the residencies we had, we invited them to actually continue and be present at the festival. So this for us is important, that we also, through the Residency Center, get to know other artists that maybe are emerging artists and that need other forms of support, and that not immediately like a co-production that we invest some more, a bigger amount of money in presenting them. So these crossings are starting to appear. And that's it, actually. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. No, that's a lot. Yes, again, many things to go back to. I think especially I would be interested then to go back to, in a way, how to balance space for local artists and maybe more offering regular space to work with also inviting national or international artists, which I think is also not two different kinds of relationship indeed with the local audience and community. The question about how do you select, and then I think there is very different strategies here, but always very important to raise that question, who selects and what are the procedures, and also this clear differentiation between residency with no technical support, which is made for something, and then technical residencies which allow artists to research something else. I think, I mean, what you ended with, Christina, so the relationship also with the festival, and in that case also the season, is also a nice bridge to Angela, because Armunia is a residency place, but is also an important festival.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this, to invite us in this so nourishes context. I would like only to describe the context of Armunia. That started in 1996 with Castello Pasquini in Castiglioncello. Castiglioncello is a really small town close to the sea, and thanks to the intuition of to experiment an idea of cultural space crossed by a plurality of artists, Armunia burned. Not only during the inequilibrio, but also throughout the year, we decided to work with the artists and to carry on also the need of contemporary research. Armunia increases its spaces and is planning to support the generational change of the artists, the audience, through intergenerational practices, workshop, digital project, and training action. This idea of artistic residencies drove a complex map of human experiences that bring a disturbance, in a way, a kind of perturbazione, se provo a tradurlo in italiano, a kind of alteration of the texture of the community since the beginning, since 1996. And after 23 years that we were in Castello Pasquini, sadly, just before the pandemic, Armunia moved from Castello Pasquini di Castiglioncello to the hill of Rosignano Marittimo. It is a very small place, 6 kilometers from Castiglioncello, but with a very different imagination and also very different community around. Actually, Rosignano Marittimo is the headquarters and the operational melting pot of residencies. This passage generating disorientation for artists, for staff, and required an essential change in the narrative around Armunia, because this became very important, as well as some changes in organization and in the actions. By seeking new virtuous practices capable of pervading politics and social context, Armunia decided to start from the surrounding environment. The rehearsal became the hills, and the nature, the place to develop research and practice. This was the first response to the change of location during the pandemic that opened new imaginary, new connection with site and community, and a different way to be in contact with society. The second disturbance, always occurred in pandemic time, was the build-up of a small theater in the center of Rosignano, a kind of occupation of a space. This was the stronger reaction to the restriction, sure that it could become a place to encourage the crossroad of experiences between art and citizen, a venue to rehearse and to perform, to share workshop and practice as it is now. This theater develops all the potential acting in the context with the creativity by a deep-rooted with local environment, institution, and community. The multiplicity of spaces allow to host different companies at the same time, offering the opportunity to share the same home, to sleep, to eat, and to get to know each other. This invisible daily action facilitated hybridization between artists, and the esprit de corps, the practice, mixed. The multidisciplinarity helps residencies to have a key rules between artistic research and the reference context by a pact of mutual responsibility between artists and community. It took many years and many mistakes to find the right action for us, to become an integral part of social and political contest, because the organizer also do a lot of mistakes during the work, and they have to try down and to find the right process in their work, exactly like the artist. I would like only to tell two experiences, if I can, about this. I just mentioned two experiences, and one dedicated to an anthropological musical research between Puglia and Tuscany towards transgenerational connection process that fuses three generations by music and theme of environment, worker, and memories. This residencies project dedicated to site and citizens mixed marching band, white voices, and partisan choir. It works on the theme of memories and proposes to create a permanent anthropological laboratory on traditional music research. And a second experiment that I want to talk about is focused on the theme of inclusivity, that according to us, per citare il professor Guccini, means don't leave somebody aside, to be inclusive. And this is the project, the permanent laboratory, that is a residential company has been taking care of people with special needs since some years in Castiglioncello, and now in Rosignano Marittimo. These experiences brought in the last 2 years some new passage in the direction of training for young contemporary choreographer. But there is an intangible value in all this. The context has generated a new theatrical landscape, a new reality that have changed the narrative, the storytelling about Armonia. Genius loci appear, sadly, by the silence, the solitude, together with care and proximity between people, helps the artist to embody landscape and the nature of the place in their research. Moving the artistic residencies to Rosignano Marittimo turned out to be more powerful than any other organization action. By the proximity with landscape and the sense of freedom and the context with the biography of that place, the artist turned back to have a central position. To be home is another question. Being home to create a system of caring as a cultural performances. By this context, the rule of the direction always interacts with the artist through invisible, the ordinary daily proximal practice, such as food, coffee, dialogues, and rehearsal. All these ordinary actions represents to the meaning of Be Home. In this surround, the multidisciplinarity intelligence was born by itself, shaping the design of Armonia. In this context, residencies find new extension in the new dialogical perspective that nourishes the project and from which the project nourishes the residencies. Which the new challenge emerged after the pandemic time. All the subjects in the contemporary scene have been called to a transformation due to the pandemic in the last 2 years. But for Armonia, it coincided with a transfer of headquarters from Castiglioncello to Rosignano Marittimo, and this led to a reflection on the nature of the place, there being carriers of innate intelligence. We discovered in pandemic time to value the returned time and care dedicated to the artist. The complexity that has occurred has highlighted the need to face the emergency with cooperation and building a new theater we draw in the future to connect art and community. The slogan was andare a teatro è bello ed è vicino. Going to the theater is nice and is close to home because it's really in the square. I didn't say at the beginning that we are a residence center in Tuscany with Capotrave Kilowatt. That is a place situated in another side of the Tuscany, very far from, we are very far from each other, but we share a lot of projects together. We share a lot of artists. We share a lot of process together. And one of these is the Residency Digitali, that during the pandemic time, we decided we need to be in contact with the artists. And the only way to be in contact with the artists was to work by a digital way, but not only, we work also live. And another project is Toscana Terra Accogliente, that means Toscana, welcome in Toscana. And this is a kind of good practices that connect residencies, production center, theater, and distribution in harmony.
Angela, if you don't mind, just because I know how it is continuing and I'm sure we will go there, do you mind if I interrupt you here and we
Okay.
we will touch also the other points, but I think because you were now touching something very important and I am aware of time. Thank you, Angela, so in the first place. Thank you for your sharing. Yes. No, because indeed what you were just mentioning now, which is also now collaboration between different positions in the theater infrastructure, which is also something that Donatella Ferrante was talking about in the beginning, I guess. No, also the importance of residency and the importance now of enhancing the relationship between residency and other contexts, and other subjects in the theater infrastructure as a main point, but also what you just described, I think, speaks very much about proximity, which is a word that also popped up, I think, with you, Aina, in our preparation talk, which I also find a very beautiful word, how you describe, with proximity, the certain relationship that can be facilitated between artists and the local community. And a certain, also when you were talking about the theater in Rosignano, what you describe speaks about a certain permeability between the artists at work and the citizens. Also, Fabio Biondi earlier was talking about competent citizenship or something like that, which is, of course, I guess the question of permeability, an interesting question for any residency holder or curator. Permeability in many senses. I think it would be important to say a little bit with that. So talking about the permeability in a way between the artists, and we already mentioned local and international artists and the context, but also I would just like to go back to a point that Andrea raised when he was talking about the space, and which I found very beautiful, which is in a way how you were describing, Andrea, how the space is also made by how the artists use it. And I found this very powerful, very beautiful to think that invited artists do have an agency in space, and not only in material space, but in the understanding of what a residency is. And it made me think how that also, in a way, flips over the relationship between the guest and the host, no? Redefines who is a guest and who is a host. Well, that's something I wanted to give back to all of you, because I guess these questions, which is, of course, again, many questions in one, but maybe one could be in terms of collaboration with other subjects, but also in the complex relationship with the artists. In residency, how is actually, in a way, some certain sense of ownership of a place shared, or responsibility shared, also something that Riccardo said before in the first panel. I mean, what forms of permeability, in a way, do residencies allow, and which ones do you find interesting and important in this moment? Just for everybody, if someone wants to pick this. Yeah.
Is this, yeah. I think this is quite related with what you are asking about the city, and I think that in our case, it's important the whole context of the place and also the building, about what Andrea was saying. So this proximity and this permeability, it's also possible because of the city and because we are connected with several artists, not only our resident artists, and with these communal spaces that the building allows to offer, and this networking and opportunities to not only be there on a room rehearsing, but also sharing other spaces with other artists, because we also offer rehearsal spaces, just like Christina said, to professional, performing art professionals. So I think is it at that point where permeability comes, and also because we are part of a neighborhood and we connect with the community somehow, or we try to. And yeah, this opportunity of being in the middle, well, not, I mean, in a city, well-connected city, and to have around other artists and so on. I think in these communal spaces is where permeability is allowed, or is provoked.
I don't know if I will diverge a bit, but this year, because it's the second year and we just had the results of the open calls, and because the open calls, we are a public institution, they're quite a sterile process, no, with charts, all that. So this year I decided next Monday I will call everybody and I'll say, let's talk a bit more. Everybody, like there's 22 people, it's okay, like to really engage in a dialogue. And I find that the artistic teams, more than in this space to impose something, it's more like to be there. Many times I go there and I work from the living room, so I'm just there. And if I see they're gonna use it and they don't want me there, I go somewhere else. Because to be honest, in a residency space, everything matters. The architecture matters, where is the neighborhood matters. How the team is maybe restricting your movements matter. It's very hard to find this balance, and I think this balance you can only have it by promoting also feedback from the artists. So actually creating this space that they feel free to actually complain or talk to you about something. For me, it's really about building this relation and also being accessible, you know, and understanding most of all the expectations. Because, for example, this was clearly an open call for a residency without a presentation, and lots of projects really had like, at the end, I want to present something. So I will also call them and say like, you know, that's not the idea, let's kind of go back a little. So I think to understand the expectation from the host and the guest and the programmer and the artist is something that is very important, and to really talk while you're there, to be available. Yeah.
Oh, I think that residencies are things that are very difficult to close into definitions. So it's a good thing that there are a lot of different ways to select and to open call, sartorial project, or direct relationship. In our experience, this permeability begins when you begin to speak with the artists about their residencies, because residencies are not empty boxes, are not spaces, but are some, we can say, listening entities, no? Big years. And when you enter in a relationship with them, you begin to build something that before didn't exist. So this is the permeability, the dialogue between the artists and the residency curators, I think.
And also maybe if the organizer has an intuition about something, just to invite to risk with you in something that can be or cannot be, but in a peer-to-peer according, peer-to-peer, just to risk together on something. It's different if an artist asks you, I need this, okay, it's perfect. You need the space, the theater space, you need the light, it depends. It depends also what is the dreamer of the artist and the dreamer of the operator and the dream that can burn together with the artist.
Yeah, so sharing some risks also, no, and some unknowns is what you are saying. Maybe I would just raise one, let's say, final question for this round, and then we will continue by opening up the conversation to everybody else and also inviting, of course, the panelists from the first panel. But just one thing, because I think we could dive a little bit more into that, is indeed a question about, let's say, the local citizens or the local audience. I mean, there is this famous, and to me that's also very dear definition of a curator. The definition is by Friesen. The curator has a hyphen, no, this trattino, an hyphen between the artists and the spectators, the artists and the citizens. And then, and someone, I think it was already Andrea, but this was a bit resonating with others. In a way, you are already suggesting that residencies also offer other alternative opportunities to engage, let's say, an audience, not as a consumers of a product, not as consumers, but as, in a way, partners in a research. No, the gaze changes the position from where they look, and in a way, the role that the audience also takes during a residency can be a role of sharing some kind of responsibilities or, engaging into some kind of adventure together with the artist and the institution. And then just as a direct question, my question would be, I mean, what are maybe opportunities? I mean, if some of you wants to pick it up, what is an opportunity and maybe what is a difficulty or a limitation that you encounter as curators when you curate residencies from the perspective of also working with and connecting to local citizens? I mean, what does it offer in terms of connection that maybe a regular season or a programming or a festival does not offer, in terms of activating or enhancing the proximity, your own proximity as an institution, as organizers, artists, curators, with the local citizens, with the local community?
No, okay. I would mention something that we were talking yesterday during dinner with some colleagues, that is about that the relationship with local communities needs time. It needs to be done super slowly and think about long-term relations. It's something that we cannot expect to just arrive somewhere and find 5 more plus 65 years old woman, I don't know, whatever. It's like something that takes time.
And in that sense, working with residencies rather than, for example, programming a season or something, does it offer different opportunities of engaging with them?
I think so, especially when you work with an artist in a long term, or at least when, for example, you are planning to host an international artist. I think it's interesting, I think Andrea mentioned that, to start working with that artist just before the artist is there. So try to keep it in a long-term mindset.
Programming the season and the residency center, I find there's already a very different, I'm going to say it bluntly, pressure in terms of numbers of audience, let's say like that. You need to fill the theaters for your boards, for everybody. And in the residency center, I keep on telling the team, the production, again, the communication, I was like, if it's one person, it's fine. don't push it more, you know. Also, the daily classes, sometimes they ask me like, oh, today there was just one person. I said, great, there was one person. They had an individual class, why not? You know, so we continue. And there's also, because we try to slow down, we think it's a slow burning project, but then even though the team is actually boycotting it by wanting to go faster. So that's for me the very different, the difference between the season and the residency center. Also, when they have this preview, let's say an artist decides to do an open rehearsal at the end of the residency, we always ask, how many people do you need? Last week there was someone that said, we need children. We need to experiment things with children. So we do our best with the mediation team to get them children. This sounded terrible. And then, or like, no, I just want to invite some people. I just want to invite friends. So we don't also put pressure in what kind of audience. Slowly, the neighbors of campus also start joining, but it's something that we know it will take a long time. Also, the artistic community will open up slowly. It's already happening, to going and watching other people's work, other artists' work. But again, yeah, Porto suffered a lot from this heavy competition, so people really lock themselves in, and this is starting to open. But it's like you said, it will take maybe 10 years. I don't know. Yeah.
There are some daily practice that is important to do, I think. From never stop. You still be in the research of connection. And about the audience, maybe that you can do a lot of workshop, a lot of activity in contact with the people, but they don't come to see the performance. It's okay, no problem. No, never is a problem. Even if the problem is only if nobody's there, nobody's come. But the audience and people is so fluid, and these things are not. There is not a measure about this. You can test this only after 20 years. I can say that after 25 years of In Equilibrio Festival is the first year that we have a lot of audience since the first day. After 25 years. So the process is very, very long, and never give up, never.
Yeah, I think all of us have a group of participants that are involved in all the project. No? If you open a workshop, you have this 5, 10, 20 or 30 people that come just because they are interested in the performing arts field, is their life. And this is a really value. This group of ambassadors is something really important we are working on a lot. But sometimes it isn't enough, because you have, like it happened to us, an artist that want to work with people that are engaged in the fight against climate change, you know? So you have to study. And you have to study who in your city is working on this issue. And this is not simple, because it needs time, as Aina said, but is really a value for us of the residency project, because it forces us to face what we don't know about our territory.
And if I understand you correctly, also maybe to be very specific, because of specificities in the research of the artist that will connect also you. That's interesting, no? How an artist coming from outside, let's say, will connect you to a specific local community that you would not get in touch with, but you would in order to facilitate the artist's work. Also interesting process in terms of...
Maybe that the people have just trust in you in a way. I can come without know anything, but I trust you. Yeah. And this is I think the project, because it's also in Italian. Maybe that Silvia Gribaudi, dov'è Silvia? Vabbè, Silvia fa il pienone, full of workshop, full of people, but maybe that in another place you are not know, and nobody comes, but if they trust in the theater, and the people that goes down to talk with the people, to expose their face, they trust in you. And this, I think that is la nostra militanza è questa.
Yeah.
Non so tradurlo in inglese.
Yeah, that's your militancy, and indeed I think there is now, I guess there is a continuity of work that is made by those who are holding the space of residencies that is then enriched by the this continuous presence of resident artists, and I think this continuity that you are describing is of course also extremely important. Thank you all for this, let's say, more close conversation, and that's finally time to open it up more. It's a long afternoon, I am aware, and we have no break until 8:30, I just realized. So we still have a bit more than half an hour. We have 35 minutes or so before giving the floor to the final moment of today. And this half an hour is meant for all of us to, for us to open this discussion and for all of you to be able to be part of this conversation. So to go, and that's not only with this guest, but also with Silvia, Riccardo, Costas, and Cristina, who I don't, yeah, he. We did not really decide about the organization of space. I think what we do need is to have microphones available in the tribune, yeah, so that everybody can feel free to intervene, and also you can speak in English, but you can also speak in Italian. As you know, translation is facilitated in both directions. So for those who speak Italian, please feel free to ask your question or to make an intervention in Italian, and it will be translated, which maybe means for those of you who don't speak Italian, maybe that's the right moment to get headphones if you need them, so that it's a bit more easy for those who want to speak. I don't know, do we want to invite also the artists from the previous panel to join us here? Maybe there are questions for them also, I guess. Yeah, let's do that. Riccardo, Silvia, Cristina, Costas. Yes, we can share space more. There is also more seats here. Cozy. Yep, so we have all of you here. Yes, Costas also coming in a way more visible. And of course it can be questions. Yeah, but I think it's fine. We can do that. It can be questions for those who have already spoken, or it can be contributions, additional contributions to this conversation. Okay. Yes, thank you. And maybe if you just briefly say your name and
yes. Okay, I know the first one is always hard, so here to help.
Thank you.
I'm Clara from Arte em Rede, Portugal. So thank you, everyone. It's been a very enlightening and very nice afternoon. Also for us to prepare for the roundtables tomorrow, very interesting. So it got stuck. I keep coming back to this sentence that I need to ask Donato, is it right? I can't remember your name, I'm so sorry. So the researcher from Bologna University... Gerardo, sorry.
No
okay,
problem.
But this quotation from Gramsci, speaking of a man being about asking what we are to become, speaking to the essence of men. And then you were speaking of residencies being a window into the future. That was a quotation again from one of your residency holders. And so future making and creation seem to connect somehow, and to connect to human nature in a way. So I was wondering then, even if all of you residency holders or space holders are speaking of addressing needs and expectations from the creative and cultural sector when building your programs, do you have any expectations? And then also Fabio in his folders speaks a lot about the poetical and political act of creation and future making. So I was wondering if you have any expectations that by offering the space for creation to happen, you are interfering with future making, or you are enabling future making. Yes.
Yes, tiny question, of course, easy one.
I don't know if it can be considered an expectation, but I think we hope or we bet that they are going to professionalize themselves. I haven't mentioned, but we usually work with emerging artists. We could discuss what an emerging artist is, but in a way someone or some companies that are in their first stages. So we kind of hope they can professionalize thanks to being accompanied during these 3-4 years. So it's not an artistic, maybe, it's not an artistic expectation, but a professionalism expectation.
I would like to say that for us it's very important that to keep alive all these processes that I described before and all these experiments that we were part and in a way became tools of resistance, to keep in mind and in a way to re-examine them in the future. Somehow don't forget the processes that we have passed, and it was important, for example, this that I described with Bros Theatre Occupation, that it was really a place that merged and brought together different artists, and it happened a lot of collaborations and very important things. So we want really, and in general I'm saying that to keep in mind the processes that somehow change you politically, because for us it was this kind of moments, these years that really made us politically aware and where we are and how to stand and to resist to many things anyway, and yeah, somehow to keep this alive and to come back and to re-examine these kind of processes. Yeah.
First of all, I don't know if I believe in this notion of future. I think it's constant presence, let's say. But I think the biggest expectation I have, I really think we produce a lot. And you know, in Portugal, if we don't produce, we don't receive money. So I think a promotion of ecology of thought also, you know. For me, it's important to think like, let's also produce less thoughts and less pieces by being able actually to being paid while you research eventually. And maybe things go deeper instead of more, just. Yeah, and also, in terms of artistic projects, we constantly are asked to innovate. No, what's new next season? And I think in terms of residency center, the expectation is more like, let's build consistency and continuity instead of like what's new all the time, I find, for me.
Sorry, maybe just a short note for us. Maybe when a question comes that is a bit for everybody, maybe we collect a couple of perspectives. Of course, if somebody feels compelled to add, very welcome, but you don't have all to answer to all questions, no? So that we, yeah, exactly. So that, because questions are also a lot of content, so we also keep it and we collect more. And if you want to address a question to a particular or two particular people, please do so also in your... Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rarița from Cluj, Romania. My question is, you know, now I think you also have mentioned this, that there would be a lot of new forms that would be called residencies, and I think this is also valuable, that the form itself needs to innovate and be reshaped to the new realities. At the same time, I see also the danger that at one point we use the term for things that would not serve the purposes. Like, I don't know, if we host someone every one hour per week in our studio, would we call that residence? I mean, I'm exaggerating the example, but I wonder if you have, if any of you has any thoughts to what's the that key ingredient that you don't want to miss in a residency, like what makes the difference between a residency or non-residency? What is the threshold that you do not cross and that becomes a different format, a different, it's just production, it's just something else?
So there are
different levels because we have a law in Italy that, that define what is also residencies or not. So if you host artists and you put in relationship with them, you pay them, you give minimum 2 weeks of availability of your space, you give technical equipment. This is residency. This is one level, and this is important, I think, because it's defined. On the other hand, I think it's important how the different layers meet themselves. Because when you host someone, you do more than what you do inside the residence. You begin to follow an artist. So I think that is important to fix the minimum, but not to define what is more than minimum. Because sometimes residencies are the starting point of some other processes. It happens very often to many structures. So I think it's important to fix the minimum, but I'm happy that there are really a lot of different kinds of different models, of residency models.
Lo dico in italiano. Io penso, parlo in italiano.
I think after the pandemic, something has changed in the sense that the operator and not only the artist asks for more rigor. From my point of view, I see that, well, I also invited very young companies, and I would like to know what kind of research they do, right? And I like to observe them. And so we support them apart from only theory. And very often when I was not convinced of the research they were doing, what convinced me was that they were really serious about it. So they woke up very early in the morning. They were there on time to do their rehearsal. So what do you think in that case? Maybe sometimes there's something and you don't really like it, but if they do it seriously, it's still important. And I saw that come out during and after the pandemic very well. So the time dedicated to them is very, very precious.
Comments.
Thank you. My name is Cristina Carlini. I come from Marche region here, very close to here, and I'm part of a residency center organization. I'm connecting several dots from discussion of today, and also about what I know from having the lack of exchanging with extra EU countries in the last years. We have mentioned and debate a lot today about the role of curators and how we find the structures and the role of the curators in connecting with the local community. But I was very interested in something that Angela just said and before in the first question. And I'm wondering, we're trying to create as much as free space for the artists to be free and to be comfortable in creation. So we are putting an effort in defining a mission, a role of this residency space toward the openness of creation, let's say. On the other side, that's really European, while in the other part of the world, the idea of have residency venues and the residence place is really a privilege. So I was wondering, what is the attitude of artists today after also the pandemic, when they accept and they ask for a residency? What responsibility do you do you think you have in starting a new creation and having an open page to create or to go on with your artistic research? Do we think there is some kind of role or responsibility also in the artist having part in the residency? Because in this narrative of today, I know that it's not so true. We focus a lot of this idea of curators creating the right condition, but I'm wondering about what is the artist's position in accepting those conditions.
So a question to the artist,
Yeah,
especially about what kind of responsibilities they are
feel
willing
they
to take.
have, or if they feel to have some.
In relation to privilege as well, no? That's
In
what you
relation
said.
to this idea of having this space to create and to do, we have pushed a lot in Italy the conversation about allow them to have this free space. So we have like really fight for them having this space. So I'm wondering what their position in
Thank you.
For me personally, I actually feel it like a privilege, and what's happening to me is that I become very rigorous. I do rehearsals like in a very rigorous way, not necessarily many hours per day, but still with a very fixed schedule. And I have this awareness that that because I'm offered something, then I have to be serious about it. I cannot waste time in a way. Yeah. So for me, it is in a way obliging. I think this is the word. Yeah.
Yes, Silvia.
1, 2, 3. But of course, after pandemic moment, I was completely confused about my work too. Like, is it necessary for everybody or just for me, and what can I do now and how? And so I'm still in the process, and I feel very lucky because I had many possibility to work and I feel very, very lucky to have a possibility to stay in a residency, some residencies. And what I feel that sometimes I'm always in dialogue. I mean, when I'm, for example, here in Mondaino or in Torino or anyway in Castiglioncello, everywhere. But what is interesting is really that always I use this, I mean, this open, always open, you know? When I'm performing, I'm studying, I'm here in the process. I try to really to open the space and just I tell to the people in the village or in Torino with the community that is there, if you want to come, the door is open, and every day someone come, you know, in the night. So what, for example, when I show the video that you saw before, it's really part of the process. I mean, it's people that during the night comes here, because here, for example, in Mondaino there is not, I mean, you can be here working in the night, in the evening, there is not, also this, I think it's part of, it's something about it, no? If you have the space just from in the morning or all day, or you can work whatever you want, I mean, in the night too. And here, people comes from the community, I mean, from outside. And this is, I think, is the, I felt that there was something, you know, because there was some dialogue there. That it was not just about my desire, but it was more about our desire together with these people, with Fabio or some people from, so it's really always like, I don't believe that it's just about the desire of the artist's desire or presenter's desire, or it's something that we are here for that. So what I feel that I'm more I think that I'm just open to do what can I do, and to maybe make a little revolution on myself to be more open about what can I do now. And I'm not sure that my research is a big word, but anyway, what I'm doing in this moment, it's so, maybe I can find something more interesting. So I think residencies are really the moment that you can be open to find other needs, other needs on yourself, in yourself, as an artist. For me. And now COVID for you.
Thank you.
It's a present for you.
So we also take you, Riccardo, and then we yeah.
No, I don't know if I...
No, but
it's a very tricky question. I have the feeling that every day I can lose all that I've been building since 15 years. I don't see any privilege around me. I don't think that... it's... Maybe I didn't really understand the position from where your question comes from, but I question what I do always. As an artist, in relationship with the world, in relationship with our responsibility as artists, which is always to question the existing and to open up new possibilities of being here together. But I don't know. Would you consider a privilege what you do and the efforts that you do to do what you do? I'm sorry, sciogli lingua. It's always a fight. It's always a struggle. It's always risky. It's always. I really feel I can lose, like every month. I can lose everything. Independently from what I've been doing, independently from my history, and it's always, it's right. It's the way it is. You always have to convince yourself and what is around you of the necessity of what you do. Once you manage to do this, nothing is a privilege. It's just work. I love the way I'm keeping repeating work. I love the word work. I like it a lot. Because, but anyway, I don't know. I never felt privileged. Never in my life, never. Yes, and by the way, maybe we are always talking about big issues, big themes, but the reality of things is much more harder than. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I have this one. I have to fully disagree. Look around, we're all white. Sorry. It's like, this doesn't happen in Portugal, for example, and this is privilege where we are. We could all travel here. We can stay in a hotel for stars, I think we really need to...
I had to pay my travel to come here.
Yeah. But you could pay your travel.
Yes.
I know, but it's some people cannot pay a train travel. It's really something.
Everything is so specific.
I know.
Yeah, I guess. Sorry, intervening, just saying that the question, discussion around privilege is a super important one, and I think we cannot. Not fully engage in this now, maybe. I think it's super important to acknowledge privilege. If I understand your answer, Riccardo, also knowing you, I think, and I share a bit of a similar doubt about the question of Christiana, which is more, maybe I try to take it the other way around. We all share privilege, yes, let's acknowledge that. Some of us more than others. Some of us have a steady job and some others do not. And there's also different degrees of privilege. anyway, I think that's what I want to clarify as a facilitator. We were not intending to feed the narrative that residencies are there to create this free space for artists who need to be free and do whatever they want to do. But indeed, freedom comes with responsibilities. And I think when we discuss residencies as place where also errors, trials and errors are possible, where diversions from productions are possible, where time is offered, we are also aware that we are talking from different contexts, but probably as Southern European countries, what most of us share is that artists' lives are not so well supported, and artists don't have steady jobs and paid work. I mean, artist work is work and should be paid work. And this is maybe something now that we need to fight for. This is just trying to keep together a bit of different perspectives that I know are there, and maybe some reactions is also indeed not, I mean, what is there behind that question? Is there an assumption that artists are irresponsible beings that use that freedoms to do what they want to do and don't take responsibilities? Maybe that's something we can, I'm sure this is not what you meant. Okay. Yeah, we go also on to, yes, I know that there is other questions at the same time.
No, sorry, it was the opposite, that I think that they take this time very seriously, and the rigore that Angela mentioned, it was something very, very important, and I was interested in what they see in this rigore. Silvia said something very important about for her taking part in a residency is to even force her to be more open and to find new impulse. And I think that this is interesting to add in the conversation. Sorry if it was
thank you.
Not well
No, it was
managed.
probably well articulated, but I think maybe a little bit misunderstood from some of us. So I think it's good that you clarified that, Christiana. Thank you. And of course, to be continued. But again, yes, let's give space to others.
Hello, I'm Kate Papi from Ober Theatre Company and the Obrana Centre in France. My brilliant French accent. So my question is, you've been talking about care in terms of residencies and how you host companies, how you host residencies. And I want to respond to something that Angela said in terms of this level of trust that you build with your community when you're working in specific contexts, and that trust that you develop with your communities. In the same way that you have this, I don't know if you have this term, this duty of care in terms of the artists that you're working with, how do you develop that duty of care when you're working in particular local context and in participative projects, whereby if you're having an artist coming in for a short residential period, or they're sharing potentially a project which might bring up particular responses, how do you as curators develop this care and relationship with the community? I'm interested in this, particularly in terms of participation with artists that are coming to the local area.
It depends from the project and from what the artist ask to the residencies and what they and how they image their project. They can image to have maybe a sharing. Okay, we build up with the audience the way and the right conditions so that that sharing can be useful for the artist and for the audience too. How we do this, okay, it depends on the age. If we decided to work with the teenagers, we build up a kind of process using the tools that they use, maybe communication, maybe smartphone. It depends. But we build up the condition so that the sharing, in this case, for instance, can be useful for both. And in this way, you build up a right relation with the audience, with the people, with the place, and also with the artist. If the artists don't ask anything, and they want just to stay close to their, in the theater, we respect them. We can ask them, do you need something more? Do you need to have a theoretical sharing Maybe yes, maybe not. Normally, they ask them. They have to be to share the process with somebody, a tutor. It depends. How we build up the trust in our town. We fortunately have a season, and we can build up the relation by the season, and we do a lot of other things that can be a workshop, can be meeting during all the year. In this way, they trust you and they come. And maybe because we go always to talk in the bar, in a small place, and it's a small town, so the process is a little bit this, is based on the relation that you build up with the people. I don't know if I explain.
Absolutely, but also what I'm talking about in terms of if you have an artist coming and they're participating in a collaborative project with people, maybe a specific group in the local community, how do you manage this idea of care of the group that are maybe sharing their stories, maybe sharing their experiences? What is that ongoing care and responsibility for...
Sì, come... Cioè, quando ci sono soprattutto progetti maybe then I also try to say something in English, but quando ci sono progetti partecipativi dove un artista sta per poco tempo ma vuole iniziare un dialogo con delle persone specifiche, magari con dei gruppi specifici, delle comunità specifiche, poi qual è il vostro senso, no, di dovere, di cura rispetto a quelle comunità? Just one suggestion while I clarify that, because maybe because we have few minutes left. What if I suggest that we collect more, because these are questions but these are also points of attention that I think should really be valued as such, are very valuable, no? Yeah, question of duty of care, not only towards the artists, but also towards the local community, especially when the local community is invited to be part of an artistic process, and then the artists will leave, but the residency holders will stay, no? So how do we take care of that? Maybe we collect more of that. We don't try to answer, but we also trust that we are still together tonight and tomorrow, and we can find each other, but still we materialize some thoughts that are there, and we let them be spoken. I see some raised hands. Yeah, Fabio, you follow that.
Allora, salve, io sono Elenia De
Hello, my name is Elenia De Falco, and I am a residence holder of the region in Campania. I would like to personally answer the question, how can you maintain the level of care in the framework of a project, also when the artist leaves? I hope that this was the question. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Elenia. Can I ask you to ask your question instead of answering the previous question, so that we can raise additional questions and exchange views afterwards? So we have talked about time, and we have mentioned it several times. So time of residencies is transformed because time expands itself, is expanded, time becomes duration. So, and what happens in these situations? Well, very often a research project needs to go beyond a certain period of time, a certain residence, because it was mentioned repeatedly during residencies, there is this open approach to unknown. So besides the planned, the foreseen of the research project, which is carried out in a certain period of time, I find it even more interesting that the unknown can happen, and then it happens often to artists. So during the project, you are steered towards different directions, and you have huge opportunities. I often work with artists who have a strong idea at first when they start, and over time through different stimuli, and we try to listen empathetically to the artist, trying to understand what is being said and planned, but also to understand the unexpected, that the unexpected can happen. So the artists, who very often have a very clear idea, they question everything and they need additional steps. So they need to stay longer in the residency in order to understand. So they need to be in a resident longer. And sometimes, they start with a project and they refuse that the project takes a different direction, but then they question the project itself. So my question is, especially for artists, what happens, or when does the moment come when you decide, okay, the project and the residence is now over because the project is ready to be produced? And what are the obstacles? So when do you understand that the project is ready to be produced and the residence is over? What are the challenges, and what tools and instruments can be implemented in order to enable a connection, thus transforming the process in a product?
Maybe can we just see who would want to share something? And there was someone there. Yes, we will not forget about it. Okay. No, we try to listen to everybody. We take 5 more minutes or 6.
Okay, Lorenzo Donati,
My name is Lorenzo Donati from the University of Bologna.
Easy, so, sorry.
I really appreciated the question about privilege, intended as raising awareness on responsibility, and I think this is a crucial topic nowadays. I would really like to discuss on responsibility as well as strategies, especially on the curator's side, but also on the artist side. So the responsibility towards those who don't participate in the process. So the responsibility towards the people we don't reach or we cannot reach. Maybe this is a daily question we are faced on a daily basis, and especially in Italy. In all Italian cities, we have like 50% of the citizens decide not to vote in the elections. And during pandemic, we as artists and creative minds have been put aside and marginalized very, very quickly, by the way. And that's why we have come to understand where we are. So I would like to ask you this question. The question concerns people who don't come with us, who don't reach us. We cannot reach them. They don't participate in the community processes. What can we do on a daily basis? And also bearing in mind that there is this trap we tend to fall into, because on the one hand we all feel the need to reach as many people as possible. We are in desperate need of reaching as many people as possible. On the other hand, freelancing was mentioned by Silvia before, and she stated that we are used to doing things that policymakers are no longer able to do. So policymakers is not able to deal with education, social inclusion, migration, and somehow involve artists, and they demand that artists do that. So without losing sight that we cannot do anything else but art, how does the topic of responsibility relate to people we cannot reach? Maybe there are borders, there are edges we cannot overcome. So I would ask artists, how has art changed over the years due to this desperate need to reach as many people as possible? So did this go to the detriment of quality? Has the way of thinking about arts changed? And I would like to ask the curators, how can we maintain vertical processes while reaching as many people as possible? We only have 8 minutes, and
we don't hear you well. Can you keep the mic a bit closer?
Okay,
it
it's
works.
working now, I
Just a
think.
bit closer to the mic.
Are you really open to new political and cultural bodies who are not necessarily recognized as an artist, but definitely are in the center of the transformation of our society and culture? Bodies who are really deep in transformation, but are not recognized as artists. For example, should we discuss how to apply and how to design the ways of application to this kind of artistic residence should be made? That's my question.
Again, I think now we collect just questions, if you don't mind, or if that's a question that you want an answer to, but or if we collect it as a broad question for everybody. We keep it like this, no? I think it's a broad and important question. Okay, thank you. There was at least another raised hand, and this is the one that I have seen, and then we see if there is more.
No. At least one that is working. Okay, so I'm Corina from Cluj Culture Center. I will have to struggle a bit to formulate it as a question, but I will just put question marks randomly.
You don't need to formulate it as a question. You can formulate it as a thought.
Okay, because I've been, half of the second half of the conversation, I've been trying to take a step back and really look beyond, let's say, the individual or specific experience of curators or organizers versus artists and so on. And I'm sorry Mrs. Ferrante is just leaving the room, because actually it was something a bit more in her direction. Because, well, this part of the... I'm talking, yeah. I didn't want to get you back, but actually my thoughts were really recently, or in the last part of the conversation, about the role of policies. And this is where it's really hard for me to formulate a specific question. But I was really surprised, and I did read your folder. And in this folder, I did have the surprise, and I feel ignorant now, to find out that there is this definition that one of you were saying about in Italy, about what is a residency. And there is a framework. And of course, without knowing too much, I cannot be too praising of that. Maybe it has its gaps, maybe it lacks some vision, maybe, I don't know, but still, I'm just wondering, and this is of course something that I'm more projecting on our situation in Romania, for example, and I'm sure maybe in other countries, whether this policies and this kind of recognition and this sort of formal support for something that usually we think of rather as a format, as a process, but which eventually makes what you are saying, Jose, makes the statement that thinking, research, space for the artist, without the pressure of producing numbers immediately, is a right. Right? So, I mean, when you put this in the frame of a policy, and when you have the state, the government, give specific funding for that and give, you know, a certain recognition, I'm curious in what ways can this recognition take shape, but is it the step into recognizing this sort of formats or this sort of specific ways of working as a fundamental right of the artist? So, yeah, I hope you felt some question marks there.
Thank you. No, and again, you are not only asked to formulate questions, of course. So we have 2 more minutes, if I respect the timing that Fabio gave us. Is there anything, Federica?
Yeah, hello. Federica from L'Arboreto. I have a question, more a reflection that somehow links with Corina's thought, which can be somehow reassumed in 2 words: autonomy versus institutionalization. And I wonder to what extent, like, institutionalizing art system and also recognizing residents, which of course I'm sure it's very good because we are here also in the framework of a European project and so on. But I wonder to what extent does this impact to the autonomy of the art? Is more, it's not like a polemic, but I think it's something like we could discuss later probably.
Yes, thank you. Is it okay like this? Is there any final urgent thought that somebody wants to share in this setting? No, thank you all. And we are aware that listening is also an active and a demanding role. So thank you all, so all of you for listening for us for so long and for listening to each other, which is also important. This is work that we are doing, so let's acknowledge that. And thank you for doing this work together. So we close this and we give the floor back to Fabio, and we will invite Mariangela and Cesare, I understand. Yeah.
Before let the microphone to Fabio, on behalf of the staff of Arboreto, we would like to thank you, all the artists, all the speakers, all of you for the attention and challenging with this torrid heat. And I will also ask you an applause for the technical staff. And also another applause for the translator that made a titanic work.
Ok, vi chiedo l'ultimo sforzo di concentrazione.
Okay, I ask you to concentrate once more. This will be a very important moment for us at Arboreto, at Mondaino, for me, but for all of us. I invited a poet, a dramaturg, and she's also an actor, Mariangela Gualtieri. And I also would like Cesare to come on stage. It's a historical group for Italy of the theater Val d'Oca. These are very special people for us because of their artworks, but because of all we did in these years. We listened to each other carefully in these years, and we've seen our needs. We try to care and welcome whoever we could in whichever way it was possible. And we went step by step, and the steps are very important in order to understand what is the residence and what it's all about. In fact, it's very important to recognize the quality of the thought of the other person, and first of all, very important to listen to each other, to listen to the needs of the others. So we all tried to put up a residency of 3 months. It was a very great experiences. Here at Mondaino there was the snow. It was very special. But there's a huge thankfulness, gratitude and love towards these two people. So I read what our poet Mariangela Gualtieri has written, and it's a very important contribution. In a residence, it's very important that the artist can be welcomed and be free to express him or herself. Thank you, and thank you all for listening. I guess you are a little bit tired by now, but it was really beautiful to listen to all of you. We are here because we are grateful towards this place and everyone here. Also the genius loci of the different places, like Arboreto. So here things were done that expressed what we thought about, and this is a huge mental expression. And I took some notes, and I hope I won't be boring. The residencies, as we of Teatro Valdoca experienced them in Mondaino, for us were some kind of final rehearsal for future humanity, or we may say final rehearsals for paradise. In our times so obsessed with the anxious rush to results, with profit, with maximum performance, with minimum outlay, with a solipsistic individualism, the concept underpinning the idea of a residence is in itself a small but effective revolution, as we said with Fabio. An art or act which is also political. The art is a mystery. We should never forget that. And it needs lifelong preparation. It needs knowledge of the masters and traditions, of the techniques of the craft. But here at a residence, we can put that down. Actually, we can nearly forget about it and open ourselves to the unexpected. Mandelstam, the Russian poet, speaks of the unexpected. Simone Weil says that the greatest gifts come from waiting, and this, the residency, is certainly one of the places allowing for that luxury, the luxury of waiting. Based on our experience, well, I can say each time we had one, the expressive force of art always left us with gaping mouths, exceeding our expectations. We are all here now with a dream. At least we are here with a dream. You come with the expectation of gifts and with an initial act of surrender. You abdicate, but you abdicate to gain royal mastery over yourself. You begin with this act of welcoming nothing, waiting for nothing, this faith in nothing. I believe our idea of residence also includes an adoration of this nothing, a nothing that holds everything, the words, the gestures, the thoughts. The first felicity here stems from the communal living. The second felicity stems from being alone in the woods. The third felicity comes in the theater, in sharing the work. The fourth comes from knowing that failure may be part of the experience, so anxiety can be dropped. The fifth felicity sometimes comes from the snow, or sometimes it may come from the clear sky and the sunshine. If you see an animal in the woods, well, that's the sixth felicity. To sleep in a heaped hug, that may be the seventh. To sing around a fire, and so on. To spend a day in perfect silence. To listen to a teacher, her words, his words. We, the despoiled ones, without cults, without rituals, perhaps without future, with our expressive energy continually undercut by fascinating, invasive technological gadgets. Sometimes it's chasing us everywhere as far as our bathrooms or beds. Well, here we are. Here we are sometimes trying to flee from a void in order to follow it and listen to it. Actually, here we are able to look at it instead of escaping from it. Here we face the void. A residence is like an empty house. The words that suffer no wear and tear, the words we call poetry, come from there. That's what poesis is, a doing that is not practical, a doing that also needs not doing, an understanding that doesn't need to understand. Residence is a place of poesis. The bodies begin to act, they search for expression in dance and stillness, in the body, in the voice, in the relationship with the others, with their surroundings. Every antenna is extended to its limit, and everything can be a key, can be a spark that will release what has to come out, because the time of residence is a time outside time. There is the beast's instinct, there is panic, fear, anguish, bewilderment in expression. There's the feeling of being worthless, of being nothing, a humdrum, a barren emptiness that seems impossible to beat. There's all the labor of giving birth, bringing life into the light. That's why there needs to be great care, great patience, willingness to wait, to understand. And then sometimes suddenly, well, there's amazement, a visitation again, a sign that passes through us, our joyful struggle to give it at last a form that speaks to others, to the absent ones. The absent ones we hold as being present, because the residents set apart from the world takes the world in a tight embrace. This forlorn world, this forlorn species are desperately in need of these bubbles of pure air, of this shared gathering of the soul. So huge gratitude to those who believe in the transient community of theatre makers in residence, those who afford artists this time for gestation, those who toil all year with daunting paperwork so as to enjoy the expression of others, the courage and happiness of others. Huge gratitude to this place, to each tree, each animal, each shade of color, each stone, each window, whose enigmatic being there in its own way has allowed our theatrical art, the art of so many other men and women, to take shape.
Bene, dunque.
Well, very simple piece of information. Our company is a research company. It's not an avant-garde company. We used to have a strong relationship with the Ministry of Culture in the 80s and 90s. We have decided to end this relationship, and we also gave up some money because we were no longer able to work under the conditions offered by the government. So we have followed a sort of Franciscan path, and we have expressively made some choices. Our structure is made up of many collaborators, technicians, actors, musicians, dancers, singers, but there are 3 people who are the key of this group. Mariangela, she writes quite well about things. My work with actors and dancers, and there is a 3rd person who's not here tonight, Lorella Barban. She criticizes us constantly. So that's the perfect balance, because we always have a pain in the ass. And we are always awake because of that, always vigilant. There is a sentence by Pulcinella Mask, and in Latin is ubi fracassorium ibi fugitorium, where there is maximum destruction, there is a way out. And this is a strong rule for theatre. So I have summed up 16 working points, like guidelines. Number 1, the real word is horrifying to all of us. Like literally horrifying. And that's the first point. Second point, we are puzzles made of the dead, but also a puzzle made of the newborn. Many people are killed, many people are born. Number 3, changing one's way of seeing. So playing as if we would never die, to sliding realities plane at never dying, lifting the weight of contemporaneity, finding a new way out of life's narrows with each day, communing with absent, this is still Pulcinella, living the invisible as a presence, and then each gestural microcosm is sensitive to the whole, perceiving the infinitely small and infinitely large. The art of the theatre is a rudimentary sensor. I actually wrote the word lift, which is similar in Italian, but anyway, lift or sensor, it's okay, which we rise or plunge into the human. Theatre is the ethics of play. And by the way, I met someone, he was quite hostile, but he was nice somehow. So, and he said to us was, okay, just collect your toys and go home. At first, I thought it was, I was kind of offended. I thought it was kind of a sort of offense. But over time, I have come to realize we do have toys. We play, and theater is the ethics of play. Theatre research is a step in evolution. Never forsake the basic premise, but never repeat what's been done before. The theatre is the evolution of the near future archaic. And then I would like to use 3 verbs. And these are going to be the topics of my next residencies. I don't know if, to whom it may concern. They're very nice and very profound. And I would like to have these very different residencies. Run, flying, and think. Running, flying, thinking. Thank you. I would like to ask Mariangela to tell us a couple of brief things, if possible. No, I'm sorry, we're really tired. I just would like to... Okay, I will now read a poetry, and since we are all in love with places and the daily love, and I will leave Mariangela's voice in Italian.
Batte le foglie a volte come cielo che scende in gocce, tira via le foglie secche e le trasporta in volo. A volte l'amore mio sorge e risplende, a volte per un momento breve mi guarda sul sentiero con occhi spaventati di capriolo. Ha molte facce l'amore mio, umane facce e musi, ha tutte le parole, ha note, sinfonie, voci cantate, ha un vuoto così grande che mi accoglie, mi chiama e mi atterrisce. L'amore mio mi consola e mi duole e non muore, da forma a forma fiorisce. Grazie, buon lavoro a tutti voi.
That was the daily falling in love, Mariangela's poetry. Thank you very much.
Bene. Grazie Mariangela. Grazie Cesare.
Thank you Cesare, thank you Mariangela, thank you everybody. I would like to thank Silvia Bottiroli from the bottom of my heart, because she moderated the panels in an extraordinary way. So the first day is over, let's relax. The shuttle buses will be here very soon. We'll have dinner together in a beautiful place, and I hope you'll enjoy it. And we will keep talking and chatting also about something completely different. So it is strictly forbidden to talk about residencies, but please read my folders because I will ask you questions, or at least read the short catalogue, at least 2 or 3 parts of it. Thank you very much. Bye.